All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Medicare Cafe pre-chat where Carrie and myself, Olivia, we log on just a few minutes early to do our live and just kind of talk about sometimes it's industry stuff, sometimes it's about our family and kids and just life in general. So
Olivia was just telling me about a tractor pull, and I said,
what? You don't know what a tractor pull is.
I mean, I know what a tractor pull is.
I was going to say, you grew up in like mid-Missouri. I don't know.
You are like hosting one?
Yes.
Okay.
So for those of you who've been following for a while or who know me personally, my husband and I back in 2018 actually created a foundation, a non-for-profit organization called High Limit Productions. And essentially we are as rednecks as it can get. We are hillbillies. I mean, like, you know, I have all my teeth, but we're for sure hillbillies. And so my husband's obsessed with tractor pulling. If we have any tractor pullers here, his tractor is called the Demented Buck.
The Demented Buck.
Yes.
Oh, man.
And so
how did you come up with that one?
I don't know. That was pre-Olivia. I'm super not into tractor pulling.
Okay.
But like I support him being into it.
Yeah.
So in 2018, we started this foundation called High Limit Productions Foundation, and it's a non-for-profit that generates income for the Children's Miracle Network.
Oh
which
my
is
gosh,
we
that's
have
amazing.
we have a hospital here in Columbia, Missouri, and so we were able to 2019 we put on our first tractor pull and raise I think like $42,000.
What?
In 2020, we had to cancel it because of COVID.
$42,000.
And then in 2021, we raised close to $52,000. So it's something that's near and dear to our heart.
Come.
It is so much fun. It is so much fun.
Am I invited? Can I come? Can I invite myself?
Yes, you're absolutely welcome. That's something we do. I don't know if anybody's local or not to mid-Missouri, but it's in Paris, Missouri, so about an hour and 15 minutes north of where we're at. But it's actually this Friday. This Friday night is the tractor pull, and 100% of the proceeds do go to the Children's Miracle Network. So that's what I've been doing all week. Last week I was at the Medicarians event in Vegas, so I know we got to see some people there. So thank you, everybody.
It's been like 3 weeks since like we've actually been here together.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago you were at the doctor's. I missed you. 2 weeks ago you were at the doctor's. Last week I was at. I told everyone like Carrie has a doctor's appointment. I was like, then I said like, she's fine. Like she's okay. I'm like I don't want everybody to panic.
All good.
But yeah, so that is something that. We just had a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. But so this Friday is the Children's Miracle Power Pool is the name of it.
That's wonderful.
And so,
I mean, I can't believe. So how many people like attend that's a lot of donations.
Yeah, so roughly we have about 3,000 people show up for the pool, and it's in a tiny, tiny town, like a tiny, tiny town.
I'm mind blown right now.
It's a lot of fun. We
3,000?
There's about, my husband and I started it with some friends. There's about, I think now we're up to 6 people who sit on the board. So there's 6 of us who kind of put this along.
Okay, this is like a huge event.
With so much help from our friends and family. We have a lot of support in doing it, and we have a lot of local sponsorships. It's a great time, but it's exhausting. Like it's just a lot.
I bet a lot of planning too.
That's an understatement. That is an understatement.
Do you carry the bulk of the planning, or?
It's definitely like a lot of it is shared amongst the group, but I do all the promotion and the advertising and the social media for it, so I handle all of that stuff. Yeah. So
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's a Lucas Oil sanctioned pool. So it is a good time, but like it's just again the week leading up to it, I'm like, why didn't I just take this week off? Oh yeah, because I've been gone for Medicarians and have a million other things, and there's just like way too much going on right now in the industry to
take a break,
to even think about taking a break.
Were you gone? Was it all week?
All week. So for those of us, I love a little shout out if you guys made it to, and you have to forgive my voice. I've been talking a lot and still recovering from Vegas. Take that as you will. And so if I would love a little shout out. Make sure you text, or do we have the texting line?
Did you win any money?
I did not. Somebody asked me, what is your favorite game to play? Like, what's your favorite gambling game? And I was like, the one when you walk up to a bar, you give them money, you guess a drink order, and then they
and
bring
then they
you.
bring it
yeah,
to you.
that's like my favorite game.
That's
I'm
amazing.
very good at that one. But it was very hot. It was like 110 every day, and didn't see much outside of a conference room. Actually, we stayed. The conference was at the MGM Grand, and if to walk from our hotel room to the conference was like a 20-minute walk. Like
in
that,
the heat?
Not even, no, because it's all inside.
Oh.
But that's how big this building is.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
It was pretty wild. And so it was a lot of fun. It was, it was.
The text line isn't, I don't think.
Oh, transition. Thank you.
There we go.
There's our text line.
Is back.
Yes, text us if you have any questions or comments, or I'd love a shout out. If you were at the Medicarians event, let me know what you thought of it. Would love to hear from you guys. But yeah, it was very much like, I will say this. I think there wasn't a huge agent presence there. We got to see Stacy. So loved getting to see you, Stacy. Mike was also there. We also got to see Rick Bronstein was there as well. So we definitely got to see several members of the cafe, but the agent presence this year was just very low.
So I think it was Sadie last week. She said something like, didn't they get rid of like the free agent day or something? So I'm sure that was why, right?
I think that was a lot of it. Yeah, the free agent day, and I'll say this: an agent. Oh, Sherry Stewart, we got to see her too. The agents, I will say the ticket pricing. I talked to several agents that paid $1,300 just on the ticket to be there.
Oh wow!
So like it was a bit much,
pricey.
Yes, to do a conference.
Oh, wow.
There were incredible speakers. We actually, I had two favorite conversations or two favorite speakers that I listened to, and they were the first day main stage. So, like, I got all I needed in that first one.
Yeah.
There was, I can't remember his name, so anybody who's there, feel free to help me out. But he was the inventor of Siri.
Oh, I saw you post that, or somebody post that.
Yes, and it was so interesting to see, like, you think of an idea, and he really talked about, like, you think of an idea, and to take it all the way to, like, how do I profit from this? Wouldn't this be cool to how do I profit from it? He was really close to Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs, like, Siri was actually an app that you could download on your phone before it became an Apple product.
Interesting.
So any phone could have it, but then Steve Jobs found it and said, you need to be exclusive with Apple. So that was cool, but then he's also creating a platform right now to where you use your iPhone or Android camera, like your smartphone camera, and you turn on the flashlight. And what it does, it's an app that measures extremely accurately your blood pressure.
Whoa.
With the flashlight? You do with the flashlight. So the flashlight shines through your finger, and it measures the pulse and, like, the blood flow with the light through the camera, and will accurately give you your blood pressure.
Technology is getting way
I know.
too
So he's
insane
creating that app, and
we are all gonna have a chip in us at some point in the next year.
I know. I mean, like, that's what I saw this really funny joke that was like back in like the 60s and the 50s. It was the government's watching us be off the grid. The government, they're listening to your phone calls. They're listening to your conversations. And in 2020, it's like, hey, government, can you please put like milk on my grocery list?
Right. I just saw that the button on the back of your iPhone, well, I have a pop socket here, but the little Apple button is an actual button. Yes. There is a setting that you can...
What?
There's a set, but who doesn't have a case on their phone, first of all?
I mean, that's true. I for sure do.
There's a setting that you can put on your phone if you go to settings, and it turns into a flash. I don't know. It can be a button if you want it to be a button.
That's cool.
Unless the video I saw was just like a...
Unless they got you.
Unless they got me.
Yeah.
Anybody knows that there's truth to that.
I am the world's worst millennial when it comes to technology. I know you and I talk about that. Like, we're really bad
so
at
I
being
could have just been
we might have been got. We're doing a webinar on Thursday that's talking about unique marketing ideas, and we have to talk about TikTok. And I literally roll my eyes the whole time, but TikTok is like wildly becoming extremely successful for Medicare agents.
I don't have it downloaded. Don't even have it.
I'm just the worst at it. So, on that note, we're
gonna go. It's 10 o'clock.
It's 10:01.
10:01.
So we're a little bit behind, but this is actually something that we really need to talk about. Need to have some serious conversation, and that is chain of enrollment. If you haven't heard this term, chain of enrollment, you're about to hear it a bunch going into 2023 AEP, aka October 1st. So how much conversation have you, like you being an active agent out there selling, how much are you aware of chain of enrollment and what that looks like?
Just from what I've heard from you, I'm going to say a little bit.
So I'll say this.
I'm going to have a lot of questions today.
I'd almost prefer that, because whenever I'm going and looking at like online forums and different different avenues like Facebook groups, there's so much bad and wrong information about the updates.
You're my source.
I'm
not.
This is what I do here.
I am not getting it from anyone other than you.
There's a lot of pressure in that, but I think I can stand up to the challenge. So just to go over just some little background on this.
Good morning, Stacy.
Good morning, Stacy. So back in October 8th of 2021, of course, we all know now that CMS updated their Medicare communications and marketing guidelines for the first time in 2 years. And it focused primarily on marketing activity as well as telephonic sales. Just again, we've known this. It's been a huge topic of conversation. We've talked about it a lot. But I know a lot of people get frustrated about this. Keep in mind, guys, in 2022, during OEP and like post AEP, there was a 240% increase
in telephonic sales,
in compliance and complaints to Medicare. So 240% increase in complaints to Medicare, and we know exactly why. Really misleading advertisements.
Oh yeah.
Looking at you, Joe Namath, and rise in activity in call centers. Because call centers,
Makes
again,
sense.
I'm not talking about telephonic agents. I'm not talking about virtual agents. I'm talking about people who one day they're selling vacuum cleaners, the next day they're selling insurance. They have no invested interest. 240%.
That is
increase.
insane.
It is. And so these rules...
And sad.
Exactly. These rules came about out of a form of necessity. Unfortunately, it wrapped up everybody. The rules are including everybody, not just the people who
the bad guys ruin it for everybody.
Exactly.
Yep.
Everybody ruins the playground. You know what I mean?
Oh gosh.
So that is something again to keep in mind. What these updates included. So number one, number one, we're getting more clarity on the telephonic sales process. When this first came out in October, we kind of said, let's see what happens. We've gotten some more clarity on that. More to come there later on today. We also were talking about all lead generation. So all lead generation must be kept on the books for 10 years. That's not new. That's actually always been required. The new thing about the lead generation is that it has to now be approved through CMS. So anything that talks about Medicare Part C or Part D at all now has to be pre-approved by CMS.
Oh, wow.
The reason why that's different is because, and again, it's talking about things like that talk specific benefits. So if you say like something's free or includes dental, vision, hearing, the Part B give back. If you have anything that links to like a dollar amount, that has to be a CMS approved piece.
So does this mean that hopefully the Joe Namath ads will stop?
The unfortunate part about that is that, reminder, the Joe Namath ads, they're not a call center. I guess they are, but
still,
they're lead generation.
But he would have to get that approved. That whole commercial, right, would have to be CMS approved?
The whole commercial would have to be CMS approved. They're a huge conglomerate. It's very positive. If you've noticed in the past few months, the wording on
Jimmy
that has
Walker
changed.
too,
Yeah,
yes.
Jimmy Walker. The wording on that has changed to where they say depending on your zip code, depending on your county, you could qualify for this, and that. So the verbiage of those have changed since these updates have come out.
Still just so misleading.
But keep in mind, Joe Namath and that call center are not on the hook if they're not compliant. The agents and the call centers that utilize those leads are.
Right.
So Joe Namath and that organization is not being held responsible for this. What they're hoping is that the agents and call centers quit purchasing those leads because those leads are not considered compliant anymore.
Okay.
So that is something that, again, is an update for that. The verbiage has changed, but just knowing that all marketing pieces that mentioned benefits, even in the slightest, now have to be submitted to CMS.
Okay.
That's not new. That's something we've already talked about. There's last thing is new disclaimers that need to be put on there. So whenever you're having an appointment with the client, within the first minute, and I'm not like exaggerating, like within the first minute,
face-to-face appointment.
All appointments.
All appointments.
Face-to-face or virtual. All appointments in the first minute, you have to say basically a long disclaimer that says something along the lines of, we can post what the actual full disclaimer says, but says, I do not represent all Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plans. If you would like to see what all plans are available to you, you have to go to Medicare.gov. So within the first minute of your appointment, you have to promote Medicare.gov because you cannot offer all plans.
But how do we not offer all plans? Like, I'm licensed with...
So do you, I'll just say this. You do not have the capability, even though, like, you could have every company, every contract.
I am licensed with every Medicare Advantage plan in my area.
You do not have the capability of being able to write an institutionalized plan with United Healthcare because they are direct-to-consumer only. So because
of that one institutional plan, I have to say that.
Yes. Because
that's the only exception to that rule.
It is impossible for you to actually represent every single plan that is available in that area. Also, another
right off the bat, you're causing conflict and hesitation with your
Cigna's
client.
PDP, you can't offer it. It's a direct-to-consumer only. So because of Cigna's PDP, you have to have that disclaimer.
Oh my goodness.
So you have to, and again, like when
anybody else sweating right now?
When you break it down, the disclaimer itself is less than 13 seconds.
We got lots of comments.
Yes,
here.
I want to address those. When you break it down, the disclaimer itself is only about 13 seconds. You know what I mean? But it's a lengthy one. But it's making sure you set yourself up. Something that I'm telling my agents to say is very quickly saying, hey, addressing what this is. Hey, in order for me to remain compliant, I have to say this to you. Mm-hmm. Say the thing, and then at the end of it saying, listen, I'm only going to put you in a plan that fits your lifestyle and fits your wallet. I have your best interest in mind. If you can go ahead, if you're more comfortable going to Medicare.gov and doing it yourself, you can. Mm-hmm. But I pre-vet my carriers to make sure that they are going to work well with individuals like yourself. So you do, in that same breath,
right? You
do have to resell yourself. It's an extra step,
because
but you do have to resell your services.
I know if I say that, like, because one of the things, like, I work with so many financial advisors. They love that I am unbiased and represent that I can give their clients all of the options that are out there. I can see this being a red flag with them too.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to reassure them, there's one I can't do.
Well, I would say it like this. There are certain plans, and the way that I work is I work with plans that have the consumer's best interest.
Right.
If a plan does not work with agents, then they do not have the consumer's best interest.
True.
So that's how I would always work. I pre-vet my carriers. If they're not willing to work with me, then I'm not willing to risk it and put business with them because they're telling me that they don't want the business. They don't want that.
True.
So it's an extra step. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's an extra step.
Right.
But it's a good way in that same breath to reinvigorate your importance in the enrollment process.
Okay.
It's a great time to explain the value that you bring in that enrollment process.
Goodness.
It's okay. So I want to address, before we move on to actually the part that I wanted to talk about,
we haven't even gotten into it.
We just did the review. Yeah. And I want to talk specifically about what the verbiage chain of enrollment, because that is something that CMS came out with in this update.
Okay.
The new term they use called chain of enrollment. And what exactly does that mean? So before we get into that, I do want to read some comments. Again, don't hesitate to text the number here.
Pull up these.
Yeah. So Stacy says,
hear you well. Increase volumes from.
Our volume is all the way up.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of feedback. Can everybody hear us decently?
Let's move this up.
Move it up.
Everybody prep for the crazy noises.
Does the disclaimer have to be in all written material?
That disclaimer itself does not have to be in the written material. It's just before the appointment. Either your face-to-face or the case. We'll talk about disclaimers here in a little bit. I do have a section on disclaimers we'll go over. But there are specific disclaimers that you need to have on written material.
On written material.
Yes. Stacy says, can you speak to NAHU trying to get CMS to give the state control to the advertisements to the state? Yes, Stacy. We'll talk about that. I actually have a section on that as well. So we'll get to that here in a second. And Stacy also asked, Stacy, I'm so glad. I'll have to show you. Yeah, we took pictures together. Love to get to see Stacy. She says, with the sales recording, will there be some guidance on how to be HIPAA compliant? As far as the sales recordings go to be HIPAA, the idea of that is that you have to have, it's more for the storage.
The storage, right.
To make sure that your storage has to be, the storage itself has to be HIPAA compliant. So two-way authentication. If you're using something free, like a OneDrive or Google Drive account that's free, that's not going to cut it. Like, you're going to have a significant amount of storage, and it's going to have to be password protected. We have a solution for that.
Okay.
And so I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it too much yet. All I can say is that Medicare Center is rolling out some really great updates.
Okay.
That is going to cover the storage and recording aspects of this.
Wonderful.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I might get in trouble for saying that.
We won't tell anybody.
Yes.
What stays on the cafe, or what you hear on the cafe stays at the cafe.
We're all friends here. Never mind that this is being recorded and broadcasted. We're all friends here. Don't tell anybody. Chris says some Part D plans like Elixir and the client can go direct to carriers. Exactly, just like the Cigna one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's Ben put on the disclaimer. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we're provided is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. And then it goes on to say, for all plans available to you, please visit Medicare.gov.
I guess where I was coming from with the disclaimer is, like, even if, like, I can't enroll somebody in the Cigna PDP, I'm still going to talk, like, if that's the most appropriate plan for them, I'm still going to, like, tell them that.
Yes.
So I just don't want them to think like there's something that I'm going to leave out.
And I think that's
fair.
You know what I mean? I think addressing
that's what I see as the issue.
So what I always do is that people, when they're working with the government, are very much used to red tape. They're used, like everybody, especially somebody who's going through the process of signing up with Medicare and understands how much red tape is associated with it. So I think for me, it's kind of like the same thing when it comes to the scope of appointment. People were terrified of the scope of appointment, saying like, I'm going to have to sign something before I even sign something. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just education of like, because we are talking about government-sponsored plans, they want to make sure that you, the client, are protected, but also me, the agent, is protected. So this is something that I have to say. You have to note that I said it. And I imagine carriers are going to add this like scope of appointments. I imagine it's going to be basically a check mark thing. But just it is an opportunity to really resell yourself and resell your services.
Okay. I can get on board.
I'm just sorry on my notes on here. Okay. Yep. So let's move on. And Stacy says, integrity has our back. Few. Basically, that was a few. That was it. Mine was a very few. I should do what's it called? Like whenever like you read a book on tape. I should read for book on tape. Anyways, so moving on, talking about the term chain of enrollment. And what is, again, if you're unfamiliar with chain of enrollment, you better get familiar with it because every new update has to do with this phrase.
Okay.
Chain of enrollment is the steps that are taken by a beneficiary for becoming aware of a Medicare plan or plans to making an enrollment. So essentially, it is every single step of the enrollment process. Regardless of how minimal it is every single step of that. So it goes from like, how did they hear about you? How did they, why did they set an appointment? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? And the part that gets really confusing about this is that it used to be like it is all about intention. Intention is everything. But it used to be like, hey, if you do a DVH mailer, but and they write an application, like a DVH application, but that turns into a Medicare Advantage appointment or a Medicare Advantage client, you still have to keep the DVH mailer on hand for 10 years because that's how they learned about you.
How, again, if you are working on a referral base?
So if you're working
how is that going to work? Whether it's a friend, a client, or a financial advisor?
So it's all about how did you contact that person? Did that person contact you, calling you?
A lot of times, like you said before, like my appointments are set up for me.
So when you do that, is it a phone call that you're getting to tell you about an appointment? Is it an email that you're getting?
It's typically email.
So that email that says, here's an appointment that we have, that email that sets that appointment, that email has to be kept for 10 years.
My goodness, this is crazy. Woo! If it's a phone call that they're doing.
If it's a phone call that they're doing and, like, you're just showing up to the phone call, technically that phone call has to be recorded. And you have to keep that phone call for 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Anything, every single point. And, again, that's what they mean by
chain of enrollment has to be recorded.
What leads to that enrollment?
Okay.
So let's just say, like, let's just play out that scenario. So you are working with your referral partners. The referral partners, they have a client for years. That client turned 65. Them having that email to the client or that conversation to the client, if they have a face-to-face conversation, then, like, the email that gets communicated to you, needs to be recorded. If they call the client and says, hey, you really need to meet with Carrie, that call needs to be recorded. Every single step.
I'm kind of becoming speechless.
It's an extensive. It is a lot. It is a lot. And again, everything has to be kept on record for 10 years. So, for example, like, if a client calls you and just says, hey, my friend Rudy loves you, works with you, I'm going to turn 65, I would love to have an appointment with you. That call has to be recorded because she is asking for an appointment, and you don't know. Well, you can imagine you're either going to write a Medicare Advantage or a PDP, most likely. So that call was a part of that chain of enrollment. Has to be kept on record for 10 years.
My question, though, to CMS is, like, how are they going to expect everybody? What if, okay, I just enrolled a new client yesterday. The client doesn't know these rules. The seniors we're working with don't know these rules. So what if she wants to refer her brother to me? She calls her brother and says this. We have no way of retracing her steps.
So this is where it's really going to become super important to have a good CRM and keep immaculate notes. Because if you can note in your CRM...
Say she called her brother and did this. We don't have that recorded, but this is what she told me.
Yes.
Okay.
If you can have that... Because keep in mind, like, the only time that this is ever going to come into question is if the carrier does an audit. Why do carriers do audits? Usually because there have been complaints made to Medicare. Now, I'll say it like this. I know I've talked about this in the past. When you're working with a client and you're face-to-face, and that client, and even it might be something as simple as, like, I don't remember what my drug copay is, they call the carrier, that technically can be considered a complaint.
Right.
So when a complaint is filed against you, typically you have to answer about 36 questions. There's a 36 questionnaire that gets emailed to you. When you have things like this recorded, all your calls recorded, things like that, it's about 6 questions. So it's not good. I'm not going to say you're in sugarcoat it, but it does offer a significant amount of protection to the agent as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure.
So in a time where there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of craziness, it does offer some extra added level of protection. And I imagine that carriers are going to be looking pretty hard at this for the first couple years.
Well, probably because they're on the line too.
Oh, for sure. Because again, it's CMS doesn't work directly with agents. They work through carriers with the agents. So the carriers oftentimes will do a ton of stuff to, preliminary speaking, to make sure you're being compliant. For example, I'm sure everybody here who has a United Healthcare contract recently received notification from United Healthcare that all marketing pieces that have been created, not just ones that talk about United Healthcare, all marketing pieces that an agent has, if they're contracted with United Healthcare, have to be submitted to United Healthcare's compliance team to make sure that it is considered compliant based on the new updates. So your business cards, your billboards, your mailers, your letters, everything has to be sent to United Healthcare.
There's a lot of extra steps here.
And
this is all taking effect as of
October 1st. This is all for 2023 marketing. However, United Healthcare is already saying, send us your pieces. Send us your stuff.
I agree with what Mary says. It sounds like I need to record every call that comes in and then delete the ones I don't need, since I don't know someone is calling about Medicare until they tell me. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, record everything, which hopefully they give us step-by-steps on, like, how to do that on just a regular iPhone.
So, and Michael was and I want to talk about recording here a little bit more.
I'm derailing.
No, it's important. It's important to know. It's kind of, everybody's really focusing on the call recording side of it because that's what affects your day-to-day.
Right.
But it's not the only thing that happened. It's the most, like, impactful and costly thing that happened, but you need to make sure you're paying attention to marketing pieces need to be submitted, news disclaimers needing to be added, all the HIPAA updates that happen. So it is the most attention grabbing, but the chain of enrollment and the defining what the chain of enrollment is significantly a huge deal.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, this is, again, when it comes to the chain of enrollment, it is particular to Part C and Part D plans, but like we mentioned, anything that could potentially lead to a C or D sale has to be kept on record.
Okay. So everything.
So there's one thing that we talk about that Medicare, that CMS goes into a little bit more specifically, and that is the marketing versus communication, and really what is the difference to that. So when it comes to marketing versus communications, intent is everything. What is your intent of sending out that communication? Is your intent really just to truly keep up to date and let your client know of information? Or is the intent of that piece to go out to try to elude them to either move or stay on a plan? So even your retention activities, just to say like, hey, this plan is going to be good for you.
All of
you
that
can stay.
has to be recorded.
Everything has to be recorded and kept on for 10 years. And honestly, submitted to CMS for approval. So the main difference between marketing and communication, marketing is talking specifically about Medicare Part C and Part D plans. So if they're encouraging somebody to move plans or to stay on the same plan, that is considered marketing, and marketing pieces do have to be submitted to CMS for approval. Communication is everything else. Communication is, hey, reminder, these are the services that I offer. Hey, don't forget your dental, vision, hearing stuff. Don't forget these other benefits you have. If you mention C or D benefits, that is considered marketing.
That's marketing.
Yes.
Christine asked, is there a specific program to use to record?
Yeah, so I want to talk about that here in a little bit. When we get
that same question.
Yeah, when we get to the call recording aspects of this. Reminder, the last thing I'm going to say when it comes to marketing and communications, talked about a little bit before. Remember, the disclaimers, the only disclaimers that have really changed is the one that you have to say during appointments, which is the I don't represent all plans in the area. Please go to Medicare.gov to see all the plans. Other than that, just reminders, things that haven't changed. Anytime, any marketing communication or just communication in general has to have your title. So licensed sales representative, licensed insurance agent, insurance sales representative. You know, something, there's a combination of titles you can have.
Okay.
You have to be able to have somewhere on there, by responding to this communication, an insurance agent is likely to reach out to you. So letting them know that this is a marketing piece and an insurance agent is you're likely to be called by an insurance representative.
So how does all of this transfer over to social media?
So a lot of this on social media, again, is all talking about what are you talking about on your social media.
Like my educational videos that I do.
So your educational videos, since you're not talking about plan-specific stuff, it's truly education.
Nothing should change with those, right?
No, that should be okay because you're not talking dollar amounts.
Right.
I'd be careful to say $0 premium. I'd be careful to say, you can get $147 or $170 back, in on your Social Security check, because then you're talking about plan-specific stuff.
Right.
So I would start eliminating some dollar amounts out of your verbiage for that. But other than that, since it is truly educational, it should be okay.
Mary said CMS must be bored that they want this much information to review.
And again, it's coming out of, it's truly coming out of those ads that you kept saying, like, those are so misleading.
They are.
They weren't the only ones.
Right.
A lot of organizations had incredibly misleading advertising, and that's why CMS is saying, all right, if you guys can't play nice in the sandbox, bring them all out to us, we'll micromanage.
I just had an appointment yesterday with somebody who didn't even know that like a supplement was an option.
Yeah.
They were in a plan that had like nobody in their area was in network with that plan. And he was like, so-and-so told me this was the best plan and that I needed to be in this. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I was
like, unfortunately,
I'm so sorry.
Unfortunately, not everybody is as good as agents as you or the cafe agents. There's a lot of people who are in it not because it's doing what's best for the client, but it's a, great way to make a buck. Yeah. And residual income is really appealing to these organizations. So I want to go ahead and cut to what everybody wants to talk about for good reason is that call recording. So reminder, every call that leads to an enrollment needs to be recorded. That includes if a client calls in and says, hey, Carrie, loved getting to meet you. I would love to set an appointment. That has to be recorded. Any outbound marketing activities. Even if you're outbound marketing on med subs or you're outbound marketing on dental vision hearing or hospital indemnity, if that is eventually going to lead to a Medicare Advantage or PDP sale, that needs to be held on record for 10 years.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's state-based whether you have to tell the client that it's being recorded. That's not regulated by CMS?
No. Some states, whenever you're doing one-way or two-way recording, there's one-way or two-way consent. So if in Missouri, for example, you only need one-way consent. So you can record a conversation you're having with somebody without the other party consenting or knowing to it. In other states, you have to make sure that they are aware that their call is being recorded or that conversation is being recorded.
So just thinking of another hurdle, another disclaimer to say, if somebody calls me, I just hit the record button and I don't have to verbally tell them anything.
But I think there's a way, you can offer that as a service to be like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and record this conversation so that you can have this on your records if you want to. If you want to review anything we talked about.
But, it's up to us if we want to do that, correct?
It depends on the state.
Yes, depends on the state.
So Dee says, what if that person does not want to be recorded? Then you need to do a face-to-face appointment, if at all possible. If that person does not want to be recorded, then it either needs to be non-face-to-face or no verbal communication. Do everything via email.
Ed says it sounds like the beginning of excluding agents and then companies from senior health care.
I will say, and again, I want to make sure that we understand that the world is not falling. A lot of people, whenever the scope of appointments became out, whenever all these plans were standardized, we were having a lot of the same conversations based on insurance agents are a thing in the past. They're trying to boot us out. Reminder, guys, CMS prior to the past 2 years has actually been limiting and lightening up on their compliance and lightening up on what is required of insurance agents, including certifications. Certifications increasingly became easier and less stringent throughout the last few years. We saw a terrible thing happen in 2020, not even talking about COVID, talking about how our seniors were the target of fraud, manipulation, and wrongful sales acts. This is a response to that. So a question that was asked earlier was, what about organizations like NAHU trying to delay this or trying to make it to where field agents are not susceptible to these rules? That was something that NAHU and the FMO Council associated with NAHU was really strongly trying to advocate for, was to make sure that we differentiate call centers versus field agents. And unfortunately, what we learned during the Medicarians event was that there is almost impossible, according to contracts, according to licensing, according to anything, to differentiate a call center agent from a field agent.
Oh, gosh.
So what they're saying is that when we thought hold tight, we might be able to get some of this reversed or at least paused, it's not going to happen, guys. This is happening. October 1, going for sales in 2023. This is going to be required. There's no stopping it. Now, there is some talk, again, coming from the legislative side of everything, of saying after Q1, if you guys being NAHU, the FMO Council, agents, if you guys are saying this is so different, we'll do an audit after Q1. Okay. We'll audit call center calls. We'll audit field agent calls. We'll audit where the compliance is coming from, where the violation's coming from. We'll do an audit in Q1. And if they are as truly as different as what you guys are saying they are, we'll make the change then.
Interesting.
So it's our responsibility as field agents to make sure that we are doing things compliantly, we are pulling the recordings, to make sure that if or when they do that audit in Q1, that we do show that we add way more value than a call center agent.
And hopefully this is, I'm trying not to get overwhelmed or stressed out by it, but that it's just going to weed out the bad agents. They're not going to want to jump over all of these compliance, and ultimately it will make our job easier in the long run, that there isn't so much distrust from our clients.
Sure.
And that they trust us easier maybe. I don't know. I'm just trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And I hate to burst your light or poke it out, but I will say call centers have been doing this. Call centers, due to their contracts, not with CMS, but due to their contracts with carriers, they've always had to do recording inbound and outbound calls. They've always had to do that. This is just new for field agents. Now, what is new for them is the chain of enrollment. That's new for everybody. So that'll be different, but I'll tell you what, whenever I was in the Medicarians, 9 out of 10 people who came to our booth were lead vendors that cater to call centers. So lead vendors are upping up their game as well, and they're not compatible with the field agent.
How does a voicemail work? Can you record a voicemail?
You can absolutely record a voicemail. Yeah, if you're leaving a voicemail for somebody and that voicemail makes them call back and leads to an appointment, then that voicemail needs to be recorded.
And if somebody leaves you a voicemail, can you download that and save that for 10 years?
I mean, it depends. It depends on what platform you're using, but like most voicemails do. What I would recommend, if you're currently using like a landline, you may want to consider switching over to some voice over IP that allows call recording to a cloud.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm getting nasally.
Oh, I was going to say, are we crying now?
I'm fine.
Can we let it out?
It's fine. We're fine. I will say, guys, again, I know I can't say too much, but as far as recording inbound and outbound calls, Medicare Center's on it.
Okay.
They will have a solution.
Somebody has to be.
Yeah. They will have a solution. So that part we will have handled. They will have a solution. Hopefully in the next couple weeks we'll be able to talk more about it. But there are solutions in the books coming through Medicare Center, that integrity platform.
Okay. We'll be ready for it when you're ready to share.
So Chris says, are there any rules relating to if someone comes to an office or meets at a client's home or business? So if it's not face-to-face, you still have to give that disclaimer, that 13-second disclaimer in the beginning of the appointment within the first minute of the meeting, but you don't have to worry about the call recording and things like that. So your face-to-face appointments are still okay. However, everything that led to that face-to-face appointment has to be kept on record for 10 years.
So the first minute of the meeting, is that what you said?
Yes, within the first minute of that meeting, that disclaimer has to be done. A lot of times,
what about like when you're like warming up, just getting to know somebody? Like a lot of times, like the pre-meeting is you're saying hi and how have you gone on blah blah blah? How was your vacation? Whatever.
I would say once you start getting down,
like
to
settled
business,
down. Okay.
Yes.
Surely I was going to say you don't have to say hi. I'm Carrie Vogt. Here's my disclaimer. I hope not.
I would think would be insane. But
there's no way.
I don't know that I feel comfortable saying what I would do one way or the other. I think like what I would do is when the meeting starts, give that disclaimer. But like while you're, sitting down getting settled, I don't think it would need to be. I don't think you would need to walk into your office and say this and then go. But like I also don't want to be recorded saying that you don't have to do it. I'm not fully sure is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So eloquently.
Well, hopefully they can give us an answer for that because I spend 5-10 minutes just talking about grandkids sometimes and babies and
just like your warm up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would say it does say within the first minute of the appointment. That's what it says. But I imagine you probably have some wiggle room there.
I hope so.
Yeah. So Christine says, SOAs will be required, or does this recording take place of the SOAs? SOAs will still be required. Okay. You will still need a scope of appointment prior to every appointment that you're discussing Part C or Part D. You will still need that scope of appointment.
Do you believe the goal is to review those who get complaints?
And like I said, there's always when there are complaints made to Medicare, those are always followed up with an investigation. An investigation is always launched by the carrier, not by CMS, because the CMS is holding the carrier accountable. So the carrier will always go ahead and investigate that. A lot of times you don't even recognize that they're investigating it because they'll go through the forms and it's not a founded complaint. Okay. But if it ends up being founded, an investigation is launched. I will say you can probably expect more investigations. It used to be like things were going on in the background. You may not even know. It wasn't even worth getting the agent involved. I imagine agents are going to be much more involved in those complaints than they've been in the past. So having those call recordings will help with that. Stacy says, so if call centers are used to recordings, it's new for them, but the recordings will be audited. Again, recordings will only be audited if the carrier calls for an audit.
Do we have any texts?
Yeah, I'm looking, sorry. The carriers will not call for an audit, usually, unless there was a complaint to Medicare.
Are there fines and or penalties for being non-compliant?
Not usually fines. Typically, the biggest thing you'll get is a termination from that carrier. And if it's termination for cause, then that means you lose your commissions. But again, usually no fines. It's usually just the carrier just cancels their contract with you. If it's founded and if it's intense. If you're somebody who, maybe said things wrong here and there, if you're not malicious with it, it's usually not a problem. They usually will use it as a way for training. But if it's a consistent issue with zero remorse or lack of things improving, then you will lose your contract. Not your license usually, but you'll lose your contract with that carrier.
If you're meeting at Starbucks for a health appointment and turns into Medicare, would keeping notes be acceptable?
So Terry, whenever again they're talking about having a face-to-face appointment, if you're a face-to-face appointment, just making sure you get a scope of appointment and you keep good notes on that appointment, that is fine. The call recording only talks about if you are selling over the phone or every step that led to that appointment. So if you call somebody and said, hey, I'll be at Starbucks, which if you want to meet, that call would need to be recorded and kept on record. But the appointment itself, if it's face-to-face, no recording necessary.
This one says, every appointment is a separate chain. All the steps have to be tied to that prospect. This is thousands of separate archived files.
And that's something we're really working on, is making sure that you do have to have, again, reminder that all of your, so much storage. You have to have an incredible CRM. And you have to make sure that your storage bank is HIPAA compliant, which basically means two-way authentication and password protected. And if it's free, it's not going to cut it.
All right, Med Center, what can you do for us?
So Medicare Center is going to be doing, again, a significant amount of stuff, more so geared towards the call recording aspect. Mm-hmm. It will have call recording ability outgoing and incoming. I've said too much.
Okay.
But it will have that capability. So just stay tuned. In the upcoming weeks, we'll have some more information to share with you guys on this.
My palms are sweaty. I'm clammy.
Yeah. Yes. Ed says it's been very enlightening. Not a session, not good news, but thanks. The thing is, guys, the idea here is that we have weathered worse storms than this.
Okay.
We have gone through as an industry worse things than what's happening now.
Was there just this weight at Medicarian of this just heavy ambiance or no?
It's
you have known about this longer, and I'm sure people there have known for longer. So has the dust settled a little, or is it still a little?
I think there's a little more anxiety than there was a month ago, because a month ago we really thought that we could at least get this paused, if not eliminated, for field agents. Last week we learned it's not happening. Everybody will have this October 1 to deal with. It's a roller coaster, because then whenever I learned about the stuff that Medicare Center will be doing, I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, we'll be okay. But it doesn't
solve for SMS.
Yeah, it does really help to have people who are keeping an eye on it. I will say, almost all of my information comes from our in-house compliance officer, Chaylin Jackson. If you guys are wanting more details on this, go to Senior Marketing Specialist YouTube page, and we have 6 videos we've done in the last 2 months all about these compliance updates. So please check out our YouTube page. We've done a ton of stuff discussing these compliance updates. The biggest thing, guys, this is going to eliminate part-timers. If you're somebody who's I'm going to do this part-time, I'm still going to keep this job, this is going to be very difficult for you. Yeah. Because are you willing to invest in everything that's needed to do this compliantly? Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Lead sourcing is going to look very different. Mailers right now, dead in the water. You're lucky right now to get a 0.5% on some mailers. Not all of them, but some of them. I was talking to Chris Weir from Lead Concepts last week, and he's still getting 2% on some mailers right now. So, I mean, it's just going to have to look different. What you're doing today will look different in October. The only thing you can do is prep for it.
Right.
And the good news is that you already know the information. Mm-hmm. You're going to know the next steps to take that information, and you have a few months to make sure you make that compliant. Now, I do recommend, if you're currently using a landline, I do recommend voice over IP, aka cloud-based telephones.
What about a cell phone?
A cell phone can work. The problem, as long as you have the ability to turn on call recording. So what I like about cloud-based phone systems, your agents, I think you guys will be getting it through Ring Central.
Okay.
The reason why I like that is because they record every call.
Right.
And depending on the package you have, they record calls infinitely. So you don't have to worry about recording or deleting or things like that. Most voice over IP systems have that as a solution. The organization of it isn't great, but if you keep good CRM notes, you can say, okay, this conversation was had around this time. Let's search that timestamp.
Right.
Most voice over IPs will have that option.
That's a good point, Michael. Would I have to subscribe to a specific CRM forever to keep the 10 years of recordings?
As making sure when you are investing and working with a CRM that you're working with one that like has the capability of pulling data.
Yeah.
So not necessarily agency block will have the capability of pulling most of that data, but you just have to be, you just have to ask those questions.
Question says, when we call credit card companies and many other companies, there is a recording that says this conversation may be recorded before we are connected. Can that perhaps be added to our cell phone answering?
Absolutely. When you call a senior marketing specialist, you get somebody on the phone that says this call is being recorded for training and quality purposes. That's 100% what can be handled for that.
Yep.
So again, guys, I do want to say we've gone through worse. CMS, as much as I don't want to ever stand up for the big guy who's coming down the little guy, that's not at all what I want to do, but changes had to be made.
Yep.
Changes, 240% increase in true founded Medicare complaints.
That's a lot.
Think how many seniors, think how many people, how many moms, dads, grandparents, how many colleagues had to call into Medicare because they were misled on something. And they don't know. They get a phone call from somebody, or they don't understand that calling a 1-800 number is not in their best interest when it comes to enrolling in a plan. Mm-hmm. They know that I do a lot of other things over the phone. I do a lot of other stuff. Why is this any different? So we have to make sure, again, changes had to be made. Are these the best changes? Are these changes that are helpful?
We'll find out.
I'm going to say no. This isn't like I'm not on board with these changes, but changes had to be made, so we have to make sure that we roll with those punches and always, always, always continue to make sure that we are providing value in the industry. We are not convenient enough, especially now. We are not convenient enough to not provide value.
Right.
And I think based on those compliance numbers alone, agents have proven their value in the industry. So we need to make sure we capitalize on it. Use that. Use those numbers. Talk about how, like, hey, there's been an insane amount of compliance issues because of these call centers, because of this. You can use that.
They're used to them. They know they're getting 10 of those calls a day.
Yes.
That's a good point. I'm going to use the numbers for sure.
Use those numbers. Talk about it out there, saying, like, I can't tell you, my heart breaks for how many people out there are not able to see their doctor, are not able to take their prescriptions, are not able to seek care because they were wrongly enrolled in a plan.
Yep.
And CMS is doing what they can to stop it. Is it the right way? Is it the effective way? I don't think so. I don't know. But it is our jobs as agents to correct it and make sure our clients are being taken care of. Now, I just got weirdly emotional. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I just want to sit out there. This is not a time to leave the industry. This is a time to buckle down and really take care of our seniors.
Yep, I agree. Thanks for sharing everything.
And Stacy says, hey, I hope carriers set up their audits with the call centers to make this all worth it. I'm going to tell you, Stacy, they're doing it. We work with the top carriers. There is a microscope right now in call centers.
Good.
So on that note, guys, we've kept you. It's 10:45. There has been a significant amount of stuff. I just want to continue to say the sky is not falling, guys. We'll be okay. We'll get through it. There is still, you cannot convince me that there is not a better industry to be in than in the Medicare field.
Agreed.
So any final questions, thoughts, comments, promises and stuff? Not saying it right. I'm worn out.
Yeah. You probably are. That was a mouthful. I was just here for the questions.
I liked it.
And I'm worn out.
I'm here. My poor voice. All right, guys. We will see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So until next time, have fun.
Make money.
And give impeccable service. Thanks, guys.